Okay.
Why don't you take it from here?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming this morning. Today, we're going to spend a few minutes talking about understanding the life cycle of building and maintaining a security operations center. So we thought the best way to do that was to assemble a team of experts, which is what we have here today. So what we're going to do this is a basic roundtable discussion, and we'll have about a half an hour of discussion. And then at the end of that, if you guys have any questions, you can use your mics on the tables there to kind of interface, and we'll try to answer those questions for you. And then if we don't get to your question at the end of it, we'll have time, after the session here that you can come by our booth and chat with us. So just wanted to go through a couple of quick introductions. So we're going to be talking about the design aspect of the SOC and how that gets designed and built. And so we brought in Ron Willis from AECom. Ron does a lot of design for mission critical environments and control rooms specifically. So he's a well-known expert in the field of building and maintaining a SOC and how that gets designed. We also brought with us Pat Sweeney from Barco. So Barco is probably a well-known name within the industry of what they do. Pat works extensively within the federal side of the business and knows a lot about mission critical environments, control rooms, and how those gets built and maintained specifically within the federal space. And then we also brought with us Sean Brady. He's one of the leaders of Winstead, who's a furniture or command center equipment provider. So he has a lot of knowledge as it relates to operator experience, designing SOCs and maintaining them from the operator's perspective, how to maintain that, get the most out of the operators, and give them a comfortable environment for them to sit in and enjoy. So that's what we have lined up for you today. We're going to just kind of go through an opportunity for these guys to talk a little bit about their aspects of what it looks like to build and maintain a SOC. And then I'm Rob Schlegel from Vistacom, and we're a company that builds and maintains control rooms for companies. And we have one of our products out at the booth show over there, which is our Secure View kit, which is basically like a command center kit in a box. So I guess I just wanted to start out, since Ron does a lot of the design aspect, and he often comes in on the front end of designing and implementing a control room. So Ron, maybe just share a little bit about your thoughts. What are some of the best practices? What are some of the things when you go through a needs analysis with a customer that you want to make sure they're thinking about, or things that sometimes they maybe forget about, and how do you kind of approach that?
Oh, sure, no problem. Well, like I said, first off, when we meet with customers or clients, the most important thing is not the physical space, or we want to put 25 images up here or 84 cameras. It's really, what is your mission? We got to get the mission defined first. You get the mission defined, what your current mission is, what your mission is 3 years, 5 years, which you might not know, but you have to start forward thinking, because the physical space is easy to define. Either it's going to be X by Y or whatever, but what is your mission? What are you trying to accomplish? Do I want to have a lot of security cameras? Do I want to have a lot of local internal content? Do I want to have social media feeds up there? Because everything's being integrated all in one platform nowadays. So your mission is most important. What are you trying to accomplish? And not today, that forward-thinking mission. And that's a hard thing for a lot of customers to get their hands wrapped around, because they only think about what I need right now to make everybody happy. But if you're designing a facility or you're upgrading a facility, the infrastructure cost and the building cost is minimal if you don't meet your mission requirements down the road. Because if you build a space to handle today's mission, and 1 year from now you're upgrading or expanding it, it was a waste of time. So you really need to look at, what is your mission? Then once your mission is defined, then we'll start looking at the physical enclosure that mission needs to go inside of. And that enclosure, is it going to be a security operations center, whatever it's going to be, then we can define that physical structure. Then when that physical structure, it's infrastructure. What infrastructure do you need to support your mission? Because a lot of customers only think, well, we need X amount of drops in here, but really everything now is cloud-based or server-based or data center-based. So there's not a lot of local equipment anymore. Most of the time you're reaching out through your network connections to grab all that content and bring it all in. That's really kind of the first meeting. Is if we get some of those topics and get the customers thinking about those topics, that helps define the rest of the project, because now they're forward thinking, not just trying to meet today's issue. Because today's issue is easy to solve. It's that forward mission. That's the problem we're trying to solve. So from an infrastructure side, that's what we look at, mission, and then we can develop the envelope around that. And is that going to be a secure envelope, unsecure envelope, whatever it's going to be, it doesn't matter really. But that's really what we're kind of looking at from the initial meeting side. And once we get those initial requirements captured, okay, now we want to have 10 operators in the room, 2 operators, 5 operators. Okay, what are those guys doing? Guys and girls doing? What are they doing? Are they looking at cameras? Are they looking at scenes? Whatever they're going to do. What do these people do? Because I have a customer right now up in Canada that has a facility that supports 16 people, but they won't put 30 in there. I said, what are you doing with 30 people? They have no clue. They just got a number, 30 people can fit in a 3-foot desk. And I was like, that's not logical. So go ahead.
Yeah, I'm curious, just like, because, obviously there's an overlap between what you're doing and then kind of as you come in, Sean, to look at the operator positions and what that looks like. So how do you typically work together? What are you thinking about in those initial conversations as they're saying, hey, I want to build a SOC? What things are important when they're looking at, the operator setup and how they think through that from an operational perspective. So
yeah, to Ron's point, and that's kind of the fun thing about pairing with consultants like Ron is that we try to force that same issue in the front is define the operation, define the mission. If there is a certain amount of expansion that you need to kind of start to think about at that stage, you want to start to have those conversations. Okay, well, in 5 years we know that we're going to need to add 3 more seats. In 10 years we know that we might need to add 20 seats. Is the physical space possible? And then once you kind of have the parameters of that aligned, then you can start to kind of look at what we like to call the micro environment, which is the desk itself, and then kind of to look at the different work operations that are going to happen inside the facility and build that micro environment and then start to replicate that as you start to build out what we call the macro environment, which is the rest of the control room proper. And then, of course, looking at all the different intricacies that entails, and I'm sure we'll get to some of those points in a little bit.
Right, yeah, and it's kind of interesting because I think a lot of times when you think about a security operations center, you think, well, it's easy, we put a couple displays on the wall and we put a desk here and it all works, but really when you start getting into it, there's a lot more that goes into it than that. And so, you're building the operator kind of experience from the, where they sit perspective, and is there any big decisions that need to be made, like when they're first starting down that road? Or are there things from an equipment, furniture perspective that they need to think about that maybe they need to answer before they're even coming to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's the thing is, the last conversation is usually the furniture itself. What does that look like, or how does that present itself? It's really all about digging into the tool sets that the operators use. Right. And understanding, okay, for this particular application, do we need 3 monitors? Do we need 2 monitors? Heck, some of them you need 4 and 5 monitors. So understanding all that and then looking at, how much resolution you have to kind of physically figure out the size of the monitors that you need. And then, as you start to build out that work experience, then you start to build the console around it.
Right. And what's interesting is what some people, don't think about until they go through this process is that, there's a lot of options as it relates to security, equipment and furniture, sit stand, the size of monitors, things like that. And sometimes what we forget about is that, where kind of Pat then comes in is often there's an overview wall that people are looking at, and the furniture design impacts the potential size of the video wall, which then also feeds back to how the room is configured, because if you need a certain height wall, you're using sit-stand desk and you have multiple rows, now that ceiling height might actually need to be higher. So,
and hence why we all work together, right? I mean, we work very closely together because of the ergonomics of the space, but also to Ron's point about scalability and flexibility, and day 1, day 2 architecture, so that you have let's say the flexibility to plug in different feature sets of whether it's a Barco video wall or whether it's Bosch or somebody else on the VMS side, or being able to bring this stuff in as your mission changes, which is day 2. I mean, the next day, the mission changes. And so building in a flexible yet cost-effective way of doing that is really valuable.
So how do you walk somebody through the display conversation? So, there's obviously the size and those parts, but then there's also different technologies which then feed into power requirements and all that other stuff. So how do you kind of...
It's changed a lot, just real quick, it's changed a lot over the years. I've been doing this for 25 years, and it used to be just put up, replicate what's at the desktop, put it up there and make a pretty picture. Half of it was wow. Now it's really mission critical. What do they really want to see? Is it video feeds? Is it drone feeds? Is it satellite imagery? Or is it simply a PowerPoint or a VTC session? Bringing that, all those flexible little tools together on one canvas of pixels is really some of the questions we have at the initial stage.
Right, because it kind of goes into the design aspect also, because the video wall surface, I call it a virtual surface. I don't really call it a video wall most of the time. When talking to my customers, it's a virtual surface. And that surface, like Pat said, is a surface you can put anything you want on it. 1 image, 5 images, 50 images, it doesn't matter. It's a virtual surface. And what we try to get my customers out of the mindset early is it's not a 2x6 array of flat panels or a LED wall or whatever. It's a virtual surface. You can put anything you want, anywhere you want, size it how you want to do it, which is really important because a lot of customers, I got a 4x2 video wall, I put 6 images up there. No, you can put 100 if you want, but you can't read them, but you could put them up there if you want to. So, I mean, that's the key aspect. And based on technologies also, like Rob said, technologies nowadays have impacted the environment or the envelope so much. If you're going with a old days, which is a cube displays, you know, the big cubes, rear projection, 3-foot space, which is still the best solution, in my opinion, personally. It's the best image, color clarity and everything else. But you have cubes which took up 3 space. Then the advent of flat panels came in. Now we're 4 inches off the wall. LCD panels and stuff like that, which are great and wonderful. But they're something you gotta look at a customer, you gotta look at those are disposable units. They have a 5 to 8 year lifespan. So if you're doing that facility, you gotta think about that LCD panel. In 5 years, you gotta start your replacement process. So at year 8 or year 9, you can replace those units. Or if you go to direct view LED, which is the latest technology out there, it's all based on pixel count, you know, 2.5, 1.25, 0.9, 0.7, whatever it is. Those have images that replicate very clearly, depends on pixel count. They are suited for a lot of environments, but you know, the more detailed content you have, the smaller pixel count you need, that 0.6 or 0.7 to get that space where there's no space in between the images on the wall. But also when you do that, affects environmental areas. LED walls put out so much heat forward. All the manufacturers tell you to do 60-40, 60 out the back, 40 out the front. That doesn't work. It's like 70 out the front and 30 out the back, or 10 out the back and 10 somewhere else. I don't know. But the heat mechanical impact is massive. And then also the power load. The power impact versus a LED wall versus the LCD wall is 3 times as much power. So when you look at your facility, yeah, the LED wall looks wonderful and beautiful, but it has power impacts, mechanical impacts, environmental impacts for your employees sitting at your consoles. Now the consoles, you know, are they going to be 7 foot away from the eyesight for heat coming off that wall, or you got to be 8 foot back? You know, versus a flat panel, you can be a little closer because there's hardly any heat coming off those flat panels. Those are all things that I talk and meet with my customers about and try to explain to them, because a lot of them go out to a trade show and they see this is wonderful and great. It does look wonderful and great in a show that's 20,000 square foot and you can't feel any heat and there's no impact, nobody's sitting right in front of it. So that's all from the consultant side. That's what I try to do. There's a lot of initial conversations that need to happen, but then it goes with the technology and consoles. You know, ergonomics, I'm a big ergonomics guy with the consoles. I spend a lot of time on console design, because if your operators are not happy, they have to sit there for 8 hours or 10 hours or 12 hours, depends what the shift is. If they're unhappy, it's not going to be a good work environment.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have to work on ergonomics. You have to work on that display. Make sure it's a good working environment from the whole envelope, not just individual parts and pieces.
So there's probably some people here that are, you know, they're either looking to build a SOC, or maybe they have something and they want to build it out further or make something new, you know, and maybe some of the stuff we've already talked about is familiar to people, or maybe it's just overwhelming, like, all right, I didn't realize there was all these even just display choices now. At what point or what scale is it wise for them to bring in, you know, like an architect engineering type of firm? At what point can they get resources? Like, what's the best way for them to say, okay, I know a little bit, you guys are talking a little bit, but I still have a lot more to learn. What are some ways that people can learn about just like the design aspects and figuring out how to build this thing?
Yeah, being a consultant, I'm definitely going to say you bring a consultant in as early as possible. It helps you out.
Right.
But you know, I did integration for almost 25 years, and I always thought consultants were useless until I actually got on the consultant side and figured out what we actually do. I mean, it's a lot of infrastructure, power, conduit, stuff like that. Everything within that building envelope has to be designed, and that's going from, you know, from the drywall, everything out. So the consultants need to be brought in early along with architects. Architects will bring in a consultant right away. They should. If not, you should ask for that right away, because you need to start from the base and build your envelope out. And that's very important, because you don't want to have to go in once you got the walls all up and say, I need to put 5 more power outlets, 20 amp circuits over here. That should have been done in initial design. That should all been called, because you're just spending money. So the earlier you get the consultant in, and at that point, I would bring in manufacturers. We're talking about products. We're talking about flat panels, LEDs, whatever. We're talking about consoles. That's all the time that the customer would meet with myself and the manufacturers to talk about these products, see if they fit. Go see a demo. Go set at a console, something like that. Because as a consultant, I'm not going to push brand A, B, or C. I'm a neutral person. I'm going to give you 5 choices or 2 choices and say...
Just one.
say, they both meet the requirement, but which one do you think will actually work for you? Because sometimes it's only 1 or 2 choices when you get in certain environments. There's only a couple manufacturers that do it. So most time it narrows it down really quick.
So you have the end users that just absolutely will not want crosshairs on somebody's face on a VTC session, on a brief or whatever, in the Senate or wherever you have a meeting where you're doing a lot of VTC, and so they'll go ahead and invest in the direct LED. Direct LED is roughly 3 times the price of an LCD video wall, just to give you a ballpark here, right? So what you give up is resolution and price, really, on when you go for the direct LED. But it is absolutely being specified in the federal space quite a bit. LCD is the second choice, mainly because it's quick and easy to hang LCD video walls into, let's say, an existing facility, a bunker or a barrack somewhere, or an existing military base. Really quick to actually use remote power, hang them on the wall, and you got your SOC up and running. So I do sell a lot of those into the Fed space as well. And LCDs, because they do have there's a good application in a security operations center, because it's a lot of surveillance video. So you got a lot of little squares around. You can hide the seams between the individual displays pretty easily.
Something I wanted to kind of pull back to the initial question was, when do you get someone that's like Ron involved in a project? And really, if you think about the way the projects kind of come about, is usually you have an operations manager that wants to set up some sort of a new space. And what are they going to do? They're typically going to go to facilities. And facilities are probably going to call an architect. Well, most architects have never done one of these before. And hopefully they already understand they don't know what they don't know, and that's when they should reach out for help. Or if you have a traditional architect on staff or a traditional architect partner, kind of just suggest that off the bat. Hey, have you done one of these control centers before? And if not, maybe we should look at bringing in a consultant like Ron, or just work with someone that knows how to set up your space correctly. And that's really key, because control rooms are completely foreign to 90% of the architectural firms that are out there. So please, push that envelope when you get the chance to say, hey, we want to make sure that we bring in a specialist. And working with Mid-Chest, they have the ability to kind of pull in a lot of different people to help you out in this process, and they can connect you with the right consultant to be able to set your space up.
Yeah, that's good thoughts. So we are a little bit limited on time. We want to give people a chance for questions, so we want to hit a couple just quick things. So we'll do almost like a lightning round here. So just what are some real important things, when we go from the design phase to the install phase, that you see, just real quickly, like what's something important when they're going to move from, all right, we got our design, we're going to start to build it now. What's important, whether that's lead times, installation, just that install piece, what kind of comes to your mind? Well,
thankfully, lead times are getting a little bit better. But again, whenever you're looking at something that's a custom platform, always plan for that, 8 to 10 weeks of lead time. But really, when you're starting to set it up, the key thing is look at service from the point of design. Because again, during the initial install, everything usually goes pretty smoothly. But when you're trying to go back through it and look at it, 5-10 years down the road, and you start to open up the console and you're looking at cabling and trying to rerun some cabling, you want to make sure that it's got all the necessary platforms to be able to service it after the sale.
That's good.
And I see a little bit of a weakness in the marketplace. Frankly, it's an opportunity for. We were talking about this last night. How there's really not a specialist. There's not a dedicated specialist AV company in control rooms like there used to be. There used to be quite a bit of people that just hyper-focused on control rooms. And I think there's an opportunity for companies like Vistacom to step in and really take over a gap in the marketplace expertise, bringing that early into the process, and sustaining it after. These are 24-hour facilities, right? You need to be able to sustain it afterwards. So, as a manufacturer, I see a wide variety of capabilities. I'd love to see that tightened up and brought into a few key people, and having consultants like Ron being able to specify exactly what type of experience that these integrators and support mechanisms are.
So how about you, Ron, quickly from how do you transition that from the design to install piece and hand off that?
Well, when we go from the design to integration side, it's called CA, Construction Administration, and we're very heavily involved in that because we'll do all the submittals, all the reviews, RFIs, but also initially I actually have a kickoff meeting with the integrator and the customer to make sure we're all on the same page, which is very important because I've seen projects go south because no one spoke with each other after the award. And that's very important, that you have to get the integration, get the design, make sure everybody's on the same page, and you move forward. That only helps the integrator, it helps the manufacturers, because a product can be installed by certified companies and stuff like that. It's just very important. All the little stuff that you don't think is important is very important. We do that transition from design to integration. You got to have that handoff, you got to have this, and we do follow-up meetings. I mean, I'm going to a meeting this afternoon, one of my projects here locally, to just verify that it's being installed right, all the cables are right, what it's supposed to be, everything's labeled, just all the little normal stuff that the customer shouldn't have to worry about.
Yeah, just make sure you have somebody that you trust that's going to install it correctly and that it's going to be working for a long time.
And support it.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's kind of leads to support. So, just kind of to wrap out the life cycle, the ongoing support from your perspective, Pat, what's a quick thing that's really important to think about as they're getting through this process to make sure that they have in place from a support perspective? Actually,
it comes down to Ron and me working together early on, if I'm invited to play, to make sure that we put in a 5-year warranty for everything. And these are 24-hour operations, so you need a 5-year warranty, even 10-year warranty on some components, to make sure that the manufacturer is going to stand behind that for long term. These things are heavily invested from the end user perspective, so we want them working for a long period of time. The other thing is to restrict who can actually access the product line, because you want them to be able to have the competency to step in on a moment's notice into these facilities and get them up and working quickly.
Yeah, good thoughts. Ron.
I mean, I agree with that. That's a big part of my evaluation for the bid process is I actually evaluate the products within the design. Then I reach out to the manufacturer of those products, say who's certified to support these products. And in my bid proposal, I actually have them where they have to submit proposals, their certs from the manufacturers to prove that they're actually certified to support these products. So that's I do probably a lot more work than some other consultants do, because coming from the integration side, I've been there and I had to do all the training, had to do all the tests to make sure I was certified so I could support my customers. And it's the same way I feel on the consultant side. I want to make sure that the integration firms that do the projects are certified, because the customer's mission is very important. It might just be a SOC, it might be this, but if they're investing money, it's important. And we've got to make sure it goes forward that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and really, don't forget that key component of that service after the sale. Whether it's extended warranties, whether it's preventative maintenance contracts. A lot of times that's usually broken up into a separate budget too, so you might have a different contract vehicle that you can kind of build that into that doesn't affect your overall capital project. But most of the time, those preventative maintenance plans, it's not just about coming back and servicing what's there to keep it, fine-tuned and running, but that could also be the opportunity where you get to cover labor portions of the longer-term factory warranty. So again, make sure you look in a lot of that fine print to say, okay, is our parts covered? Is it a return to bench warranty? Is it fully covered service and labor? Is it on-site labor? Look at all those things and really make sure that you're understanding what you're about to buy. And I always say, buy the extended service plan anytime you're working in a 24/7 situation, because you're going to need it at some point.
Yeah, those are all great thoughts. One additional thought that I was thinking is, response times. On our side, that's one thing that's really important for a lot of our customers is, are you going to get here within 2 hours? Is it a 2-hour response? Is it a 4-hour response? Are you able to respond 24/7? So depending on how mission critical your space is, might determine your response time. Can you have a portion or all of your SOC down for an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, or does it have to wait till the next day? So depending on what you're building, how critical that is really would determine, how much of a response you need from whoever's providing your your control room. So it's something to really kind of keep in mind as you're going through that process.
And call it out.
Right.
That's the other thing in the product documentation. That's something Ron does a great job of too. Is all that's identified. In your specification or in your request for bid. Make sure if you need a 2-hour response window, put it in there.
Yep. So yeah, if you're working with Ron, that's somebody that's going to help you kind of think through that stuff. And obviously all these other players up here can help think through some of those questions or needs. And there's we could spend the entire day just talking about so many different aspects of this. With pixel pitches and bezel widths and stuff like that, and just options on the command console. So but we want to give you guys an opportunity to maybe ask some questions for the benefit of the group. If you have a question, you can push your talk button there to make sure that we get that captured. But questions from the audience. What are you guys seeing? What are some of the things that you're looking at? Questions that you've come up with.
Yesterday, we had a lot of end user panels, and one of the customers was very clear on what he called his end user, meaning he was an administrator for a large federal agency local close by, but he spoke very clearly about his end user, which is the person sitting at the console operating the system.
Yeah.
How important is it, and how much time should be spent with that person or those people in the command center during the design phase of the console, learning what they're doing, what problems they have, and things associated with the actual end user, meaning the employee who's sitting in front of the console?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting in this time and age, especially with how difficult it probably is for everybody to hire and retain operators. So
Right, and that's a great question, because that's very important. You guys spend a lot of time with that person. I had a customer where I actually went out and did surveys of 2 different operation centers for them, of all their employees, all their shifts. And the reason the customer hired me to do that was they want to make sure their employees were happy and they're meeting their mission. And what I found was, of the employees working, chairs are one of the biggest issues that pisses them off.
Yep, that's true.
Because they won't spend $4,000 on the Iron Horse chair. They'll spend $1,500 on the Office Max chair or something. And your employees are sitting there. The employee ergonomics at a console is very, very important to me. I spend a lot of time on that. But also, it goes back to the mission statement, which we started off the conference with. You got to find out what the mission is. You can't talk to the supervisors. Supervisors have no clue what's going on. You have to talk to the employees who are actually pushing the buttons and sitting in front of the monitors. Find out what they're doing, because that's what you got to make happy. You got to make sure that mission is being met. From there, always forward.
And on the technology side, you want to make sure you're not overwhelming that operator, right? You want to make sure that they have the canvas or the pixel space to play with that's in front of them, but also that you're not overwhelming them with situational blindness, if you will, of having too much information in front of them. And so all those aspects we can take the inputs, but also coach them alongside that on what technologies can bring to them that they're not actually using today.
And anytime you're designing a control center like this, you should always be looking at it from operator first perspective. Again, the entire design of the center isn't just to be, a show-worthy place. Now you can have both things, but it's got to meet the function, right. And the operator is the function. So focus on that person. Get their buy-in, because that's the other thing is you're kind of going through this. Control center renovations and new builds are all about change management too. So you want to make sure that you're kind of engaging those people, understanding what their needs are, tweaking the space a little bit, but always have that operator first lens.
Yep, exactly.
Great question. Other questions?
I'll throw something else out there.
Sure. Okay.
One of you or many of you may have used the term ergonomics, but to me that's a really important piece of this. Can you talk a little bit about how ergonomics and human factor engineering are a big part of what you're doing in a design?
Right, from the design standpoint, normally we have a whole team that does ergonomics within the corporation, so we'd get those guys involved. But from the console manufacturer side, we, like Sean said, is the console going to be, how big do we estimate? What is the mission there? So we try to relay the mission over to the console manufacturers. This person will be sitting here for 8-hour, 10-hour shift. They're going to have 2 displays. They envision maybe 3 displays, depends what they're trying to look at. And they want to have a flat console. They want to have a curved console. They want to have upgrade capability from the ergonomic standpoint. Then we'd work with the console manufacturers to, all right, put a person in the seat and rev it. Okay, what's the reach? What's this? Where is the cell phone charger if it's an unclassified space? All this stuff like that. Where's the controls for the set stand? The fan, the little fan motor, the heater, all this stuff. Where all this stuff is located, and how they're going to operate during the day. But we work with the console manufacturers a lot to do that, and Sean probably has a lot more insight on me.
Yeah, and I mean, ergonomics is such a wide stroke of brush. I mean, when you think about it, it encompasses everything, but boiled down, it's fitting the work and the tasks to the operator. And really, that's what it's all about, is making sure that you create a position that's comfortable. And if you were to set up a completely, truly ergonomic standpoint or a console, you're going to be at a full resting position at all times, but that's not overly comfortable. Most of the time you're going to slouch a little, you're going to lean a little, but you have to be able to fit the work environment for all that. And when you look at the operator themselves, there's so many pieces of mathematical equations that go into this. So it's all about sight distance, it's all about visual acuity, it's all about reach angles, like Ron mentioned. The monitors that are on your desk need to be at a certain depth, but my eyes are different than Ron's eyes, are different than Pat's eyes. So you need to have some of that adjustment built into it. From that point, then is there intermediary displays? Is there a larger video wall that you're also kind of looking into that? But it goes beyond the technology, even to the environment itself. When you look at walk paths, traffic studies, is your HVAC balanced? You don't want to have a vent blowing right on top of your operator that's going to freeze them out one day. You can really kind of get overly deep into the conversation about it, but really it's all about just making sure that you set up a comfortable space for operators. And there's an international standard out there, 11064. That is a good guideline, and I'll put that out there as a guideline because, again, that's not the gospel. There's things that you kind of need to flex off of to make sure that you kind of got it set up right for your specific operation.
Right, and each environment's a little different. If you have radio operators, got radios they got to reach out to, or they're always on the phone with a headset, or they pick the phone up. I mean, all that stuff has to go into the play. Where's that radio at, and how they interface with that radio, which people don't think about, but it's 20 times a day I got to be on that radio, and it's very annoying if I got to reach way around over here to get it.
I've seen a trend over the last 5 years of people doing proof of concepts a lot more, where they'll bring the operators into the space, whether it's in our demo facility in Atlanta or DC or one of our partners' facilities, and they'll just bring the operator in, sit them down in front of the console that we think will do them best, and see if we can tweak it from there.
Yeah.
It's a great question. Another one of those things that you could spend all day talking about.
Yeah, I mean, there's really so much to this, and that's why we brought the experts here. Not just for them to kind of relay their information, but to give you guys a resource, right? So there's just so much to this. These guys have decades of experience, in doing this and things that you don't think about, and that's why it's really important to, partner with an expert that knows what they're doing, so that they can ask these questions, so that you don't design this and I can't see the bottom of the video wall because the monitor of our desk is too high. So, these are resources for you guys to use. I think we're about out of time at this point for this session, but you're more than welcome to, chat with any of them. I'll be over at our booth. If you have some more questions, we can connect you with one of them as well. And just for those of you that might be a security integrator in here, a lot of times what I've seen, because I come from that world, is, the integration piece stops with the VMS or the access control solution. Security integrators often don't take on the scope of this because it's a little bit unique, it's somewhat AV, and it can be fairly complex. But you can utilize partners to help you with that. So you can use that as a value add for what you're doing, to expand your business by leveraging resources to provide a solution for your customers. So don't walk away from that opportunity. Maybe it's not something you can do, but you can engage resources to add value to your customer and get them, more than a couple of displays hung on the wall, a SOC that really provides value to the organization. So we appreciate you guys and ladies being here this morning. Hopefully this was of value to you. Thank you to Mid-Chest for having us out and being